What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, and we are kicking off our Week 8 college football previews early this week due to a huge Tuesday night matchup on ESPN2 at 6:30 p.m. Central Time between the number 14 Coastal Carolina Chanticleers and the Appalachian State Mountaineers. And Coastal Carolina finds themselves as 3-point favorites, but we had to cover this matchup because it's been two of the most dominant teams in the Sun Belt over the past few seasons. You have Appalachian State winning the 2018 and 2019 Sun Belt Championship, while Coastal Carolina really made a statement last year, winning the 2020 championship, and currently holds an undefeated record, entering with a top 15, a top 15 resume right now. They're 14 in the poll. So right now, this is really a giant matchup to determine who's going to take that top spot in the Sun Belt this year. And you look at the storylines coming into this game outside of that. Like I said, the Chanticleers coming into this matchup 6-0, top 15 ranking. They've dominated their schedule to this point in the season with only one game even being close. That coming within 14 points, Buffalo is the only team to do it thus far on the Chanticleers schedule. But you're looking at Jamie Chadwell's squad coming in at probably with their toughest test of the season, traveling to Boone, North Carolina, and a win here will really solidify this team as the favorites in the Sun Belt moving forward. And on the other side, the Mountaineers enter this matchup after a very tough loss to Louisiana Lafayette last week, and it makes it really a must-win situation in Boone, North Carolina this Tuesday night. If this team plans to play for anything meaningful in the Sun Belt this season, you already have a loss to Louisiana Lafayette, who's arguably another top 3 team in this conference. If you drop this one, you're probably going to be on the outside looking in. The squad's 4-2 coming in, but a win this Tuesday night would be a huge step forward in really turning the season around for Appalachian State. Now, looking at the series history, the Mountaineers have absolutely dominated this series. It was first played in '05, but now it's a yearly matchup ever since Coastal Carolina joined the Sun Belt back in 2017. The Mountaineers lead the series 6-1, with the Chanticleers one win coming last season in Conway for their first ever win over Appalachian State on their way to a dominant season. So we have a lot on the line here. We have two teams that are extremely motivated. The Coastal Carolina is looking to make a statement, continue their undefeated season, while Appalachian State's looking to prove they're still legit Sun Belt title contenders. And so going into the keys for this matchup, the key for Coastal Carolina is really to establish the rushing attack against this Mountaineers defense and then allow Grayson McCall to work off that loaded box, make plays down the field with the play action pass, which has been the formula for the Chanticleers all season long. You're looking at Appalachian State's defense allowing almost 380 yards per game and over 5.5 yards per play for the season. So you can move the ball against this Appalachian State team. It's just, can Coastal Carolina establish the run and allow Grayson McCall to use the play action, because that's when this offense is damn near impossible to stop this season. And can they do it in a hostile environment on the road in prime time on ESPN2? You're looking at the Chanticleers rushing attack. It's been so explosive this season so far. Over 260 yards on the ground per game. They're averaging almost 7 yards per carry as a team, and they're averaging over 3 rushing touchdowns per game this season, 3.3 to be exact. You look at just the wide variety of ways they can move the ball on the ground. You look at Reese White, 455 rushing yards, averaging over 7 yards per carry with 7 touchdowns on the ground. And then a guy who's been banged up but will be finally healthy this weekend is Shamari Jones, averaging over 9 yards per carry for over 400 yards as well, with 4 rushing touchdowns in only 4 games this season. And that doesn't even include Braden Bennett, who's been the rotational piece, averaging over 7 yards per carry and also finding the end zone 4 times. And then you got McCall with his 2 rushing touchdowns. And we have already seen last season how dynamic he can be with his legs against defenses like this if they don't contain him and don't account for him in that back end of the defense. And As good as this rushing attack has been, guys, as great as it is and explosive as it is, and as much as it's a key to set up the play action, it's no debate who the leader and the key piece to this Coastal Carolina offense is. That's sophomore quarterback Grayson McCall, who I think is the most overlooked quarterback in the country and literally has an argument, has a legit argument to be a top five, top three quarterback in the country right now. You look at what he's done this season, guys, 79.8% completion percentage for almost 1,500 passing yards. He's averaging 15.7 yards per pass, 14 passing touchdowns, a pick, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He has one of the highest QB grades in the country, according to Pro Football Focus's advanced analytics, with a 92.4. This kid is only improving on what was an outstanding freshman season last year, which he was the Sun Belt Player of the Year on the offensive side of the ball and leading the Chanticleers team to a Sun Belt title. But when you break it down, look more closely into how McCall does this. The rushing game is so important because working off the play action is something that this Chanticleers offense does at a high level. And it's something the Mountaineers defense is going to have to know and have to work to stop this Tuesday night, or things could get out of hand in Boone. Now, the Chanticleers actually run play action on almost 48% of their passing concepts. And in those plays, in those concepts, McCall has a 93.8 offensive grade by Pro Football Focus. And it just shows how well he excels and this off and how efficient this offense can be when working at full capacity with the run game as well. On play action attempts, McCall is completing over 83% of his passes for over 1,000 yards, 17.7 yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns, 0 turnovers, and almost 39 first downs generated on play action concepts this season. Play action is where Coastal Carolina generates a majority of their explosive plays through the air. And when you look at when they don't run play action, their yards per pass attempt drops to under 10 yards per attempt. You can tell that the play action is where this team excels. So if you're Appalachian State, you have to know this. Try to slow down the rushing attack. And also, you have to respect McCall's ability to push the ball down the field, because this kid is going to air it out. And if you're not playing well in the back end of the defense, he is going to expose you. And you look at one of his biggest targets, tight end Isaiah Likely, 4 touchdowns 2 weeks ago, and put on one of the most impressive performances in the country. You know, I'm not saying he's Kyle Pitts, but he plays a lot like him, where he is just an absolute threat on the outside and a matchup nightmare due to his athleticism and size that he has. So that's my X factor for the game, is that McCall Likely connection on the outside. But looking at the Mountaineers, it's going to be similar. It's the rushing attack, but it's for a completely different reason than why it's the rushing attack and being balanced for Coastal Carolina. The rushing attack is the key here because that's where the Mountaineers thrive, and that's where their best athletes are on this offense. And also, it was evident last week against Louisiana Lafayette that the Mountaineers have to run the ball. They got held to only 78 yards rushing, and less than 2.5 yards per attempt, and lost 41-13 because the Raging Cajuns forced them to become one-dimensional. Chase Brice turned the ball over, and they also just had some fumble issues. It was an absolute everything fell apart last week for the Mountaineers, so I expect them to bounce back in a big way. But the rushing attack has to be there, and especially it was hurt by Cameron Peoples being out, who was really their top running back coming into the season. Now, when you look at this Mountaineers rushing attack, when Peoples and Noel are healthy, they have one of the best running back duos in the country right now, averaging almost 180 yards per game on the ground and 2 touchdowns per game this season on the ground. They have to have explosive games tonight. Now, Cameron Peoples has been out for 2 games. And I was trying to find an injury report. I'm not sure if he's going to suit up. I'm assuming he could be a game time decision, but Cameron Peoples is going to be a key. So I think Appalachian State needs him to play this Tuesday night. You look at Nate Noel, though. He's going to be the number one guy if Peoples is still out. He has over 550 yards on the ground, almost 6 yards per carry and a touchdown. And then Dietrich Harrington has also dealt with injuries this season. Saw limited action against Louisiana Lafayette, but he should be back and healthy for this game. And to get an All-American running back like Harrington back for the biggest game of the season is huge for this Mountaineers rushing attack. And then Peoples, if he's healthy, 353 on the ground this year and 8 rushing touchdowns. He is their home run hitter, and he also has some of the most experience in the Sun Belt in terms of rushing. And I think Peoples, Noel, and Harrington have to put up big numbers this weekend against a Coastal Carolina defense that is pretty stout against the run this year. And when you're looking at why the rushing attack is so important, it has to be because Chase Brice, when when he's at his best, this offense goes to another level. But turnovers and inaccuracies at times seem to haunt him in the biggest moments, especially against very good defenses. This Coastal Carolina defense ranks top 10 in points per game allowed and is also holding opponents to less than 285 yards per game and less than 5 yards per play. Brice is going to have to be on. And what Appalachian State cannot have happen is to become one-dimensional this weekend in Boone. And when you look at Brice this season, he's completing over 66% of his passes for over 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions. You've got to give Brice credit, though. He leads the Sun Belt in passing yards per game this season through the 6 games the Mountaineers have had. And the number one thing this Tuesday for Brice is to avoid turnovers and for the O-line to keep Brice comfortable against this talented D-line for the Chanticleers. It's under pressure is where Brice struggles. His completion percentage drops to under 50%. His average pass attempt drops to under 8 yards attempt, has a pick, and his advanced analytic grade is 61.3 for the passing grade, and he's been sacked 8 times this season when the defenses come after him. This offensive line has to play their best game of the season and really keep him clean. When he's kept clean, he's completing over 70% of his passes for over 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns, and also an 86.1 passing grade. So you can tell the big difference when they can keep Brice clean and when they cannot. So that's going to be the key, is one, to establish the rushing game, and then also put Brice into comfortable, manageable situations in the pocket and allow him to play his game without feeling pressure to force anything, without him making any mistakes. This is a big test for Chase Brice and whether he has taken that step forward since he's been at Appalachian State. Now, for the matchup to watch, it's easy to choose because, as you could tell based on my keys, this Appalachian State O-line against the defensive line of Coastal Carolina is absolutely the most important matchup of the game. You look at the offensive line unit and how they have to help Appalachian State establish this rushing attack and protect Brice this Tuesday. Coastal Carolina, if they can find ways to keep Brice off his spot while finding a way to slow down this Mountaineer rushing attack, that's going to go a long way in the Chanticleers getting a huge road Sunbelt win to even further their undefeated season. This will probably be their most impressive win of the season if they can pull it off. Now, easier said than done, though, because this Appalachian State O-line has performed extremely well this season. They've given up the second fewest sacks in the Sun Belt with only 7 allowed, and they've only allowed 35 pressures for the season, and they've paved the way for over 430 yards per game for this offense. The offensive lineman, I want to give these two guys a shout out. Cooper Hodges at offensive tackle and Bear Hunter at center. These guys have allowed 0 sacks this season and only 6 total pressures for the season combined, both of which are going to be Sunbelt All-Americans. Bear Hunter was one of the best offensive linemen in the Sunbelt last season anyway. Hodges and Hunter are going to be keys against this very, very talented defensive line for Coastal Carolina. The one player I need to see more out of is Damon Daly, who only has a 27.5 pass blocking grade this season. He's going to have a tough assignment against a very, very strong defensive tackle group for the Chanticleers this weekend. This O-line has to communicate. They have to have their best performance of the season and win the line of scrimmage. I expect this offensive line to be extremely motivated after they lost the line of scrimmage last week against a very good ULL team. So I'm expecting a different fire and a different type of motivation coming off of this Appalachian State offensive line Tuesday night. And on the other side, The Chanticleers rank 5th in the Sun Belt with 17 sacks this season, and they've generated over 45 pressures. And they're holding opponents to less than 3.7 yards per carry, which is an outstanding mark. And when you look at who leads it, Josiah Stewart and Jeffrey Gunter off the edge this season have been spectacular. Both ranked top 10 in the Sun Belt for sacks. They've combined for 9 sacks, 8 QB hits, and 17 pressures on opposing QBs this season. Both of these guys are making strong cases for All-American runs. And that's not even including C.J. Brewer, who is already a multi-time Sun Belt All-American defensive tackle who has 3 sacks this weekend and is really the anchor on the inside of this defensive line for Coastal Carolina. The number one thing for Coastal Carolina, if they can win the line of scrimmage, they can absolutely win this game and pull this off. And it's going to be an interesting honorable mention matchup to see how these Appalachian State wide receivers match up with a very strong secondary led by Jordan Strong for Coastal Carolina. That was my other matchup. I really threw back and forth on whether to pick it, but that's going to be an important one because these Appalachian State wide receivers have to get separation and have to give Chase Brice some deep shots that are high percentage, and he can't be having to force balls into tight coverage all night long. They're going to have to go make plays for their quarterback this Tuesday night against the Coastal Carolina defense. So for my prediction, man, this is so tough because as much as I'm an Auburn grad and an Auburn fan, these are two teams that I always seem to find myself rooting for. I like both of their coaches. I like both of just the energies around this program. And so I always find myself rooting for them, which is why I previewed this matchup because it is one that I think I'm more excited for this matchup than a lot of the big matchups that everyone else on YouTube and any college football site is going to be talking about. But right now, man, just looking at these teams, I trust the quarterback play at Coastal Carolina to be a bit better than what Appalachian State is going to bring. And when you're playing big time football like this, you're going to have to trust your quarterback. McCall is just light years ahead of where Brice is right now. I think Brice makes a few mistakes this weekend, and I think McCall makes just enough plays to win the game. And I think this Coastal Carolina defense can make just a stop here or there to ultimately pull away at the end and get a huge win in Boone, North Carolina to continue their undefeated season. I have Coastal Carolina 34-24 over Appalachian State this weekend in Boone. Well, not this weekend, on Tuesday night. So I got the Chanticleers 34, the Mountaineers 24 this Tuesday night. So guys, if you're new, hit that subscribe button and also make sure to like the video and make sure to comment your score prediction below. Let me know your thoughts on the game. What did I miss? Where did I go wrong? What did I hit on the head? I love y'all's feedback, and I definitely cannot wait to see this game Tuesday night. Make sure to tune in ESPN2, 6:30 p.m. Central. That's 7:30 p.m. Eastern time to tune into this great Sun Belt matchup. But I got the Chanticleers winning this one by 10 points. But guys, appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I said, subscribe now. But for right now, the Blue Bloods are out.